So there was some real dark, shady stuff in the background.
Mm-hmm.
Not to mention that we think that there was a heavy BDS&M scenario on the property at one time. We found a lot of things indicative of symbolic bondage occurring, or even maybe ritual bondage occurring. So we suspected there was a great deal of darkness associated with the property.
But what was the darkness associated with the recipient of all this haunting? Why this person?
Well, I think it was a target of opportunity, really. I think Clevis had an incredible personal library. For a person that was a stereotypical redneck in north central Florida, he had a library that was composed of ancient grimoires, ancient books, some of them legendary, not even known to exist, but were actually thought to be, legend, not even real. And these things were ancient books that were leather-bound, handwritten volumes, and some of them were in parchment, some of them were in Latin, some of them were in ancient Greek, some of them were on vellum, some of them were on, we had scrolls, we had papyrus, there was even clay tablets with cuneiform writing on them on this guy's bookshelf. And something had occurred there where he had probably conjured something in one of these books and probably didn't exactly get what he was trying to get and got something else.
Or is it possible that one of these books was actually possessed that he brought into his house, and this is where the entity came from?
We can't rule any of that out.
So
there's so many different conceivable possibilities there. But the end result was this thing was associated with his property, but it wasn't confined to his property. It traveled. It went to Robbie's house, appeared in his living room as a demon dog with these deep, dark eyes that literally sucked the light out of the sky. They were the kind of things that you looked at and they were like looking into infinity. It was just crazy. And we weren't the only ones that saw the manifestation of the dog as well. Other people did. And when you deal with this sort of physical manifestation, there's a tremendous amount of energy involved in that. And that energy was very negative, and it had adverse effects on people, near it. So whether it was actually trying to affect someone or not, it was still affecting them merely by being present.
So tell me, what do we know about the entity itself?
We didn't know the entity's name at the time. It was much later, after the fact, that we finally discovered exactly what we were dealing with.
Okay.
But this thing predated Christianity. In fact, no known Christian banishments worked on it. It predated Judaism. Its source was from ancient Sumeria. And we finally found out that the name of this thing was Pazuzu, which unfortunately was much misaligned in the Hollywood movie The Exorcist, which, for want of a better thing, just kind of randomly selected the name of a demon to put a name to it, and they selected Pazuzu. But we didn't find out until later.
So let me understand this. The name of the demon that you were dealing with was the name of the demon in the Exorcist movie.
Well, the demon in the real live case that the Exorcist movie was based on was Satan. Okay? But Hollywood picked a name, and they happened to pick Pazuzu as the name for this demon in the movie. Of course, the demon that was in the Exorcist in real life was not Pazuzu. It responded to Christian banishments. It was according to the actual records of the case, it was believed to be Satan by the Catholic Church.
Well, aren't all demons representative of Satan?
No. There are things that predate the whole notion of Satan, and that's what we were dealing with. We were dealing with something that existed far before Satan was even created or thought about by the Christian religion. See, the Christian religion created Satan sometime after the 1st century. In fact, the Bible, the New Testament of the Bible, wasn't even written until around the 2nd century A.D. And that's when Satan first starts to appear by name. Now, there are people that will say, oh, well, he appeared in the Old Testament, but Satan is never mentioned by name in the Old Testament. So we were dealing with something that predated Christianity, and as such, Christian banishments had no effect on it. In fact, it made a point to demonstrate that they had no power over him.
So how do you deal with an entity that's not confined to the religious beliefs that so many people believe that these entities are afraid of, are controlled by?
That's a good question. We didn't know. And that's part of the fun of the book, is the journey that we went through in trying to find answers and trying to come up with things to do it. We had to go back to ancient religions. We had to go back and look at what ancient beliefs were. And back during this time, it was more of a shamanic type based religion where the powers of the environment were considered to be associated with the gods. So we had to go back and study ancient Sumerian religion. Even though we didn't know what the name of this thing was, we sort of had a good idea of what time period it came from because of several interesting books that we had seen rather dog-eared on his shelf. So doing that was a journey. It was a search. The whole reason we went to that psychic fair was to see if we could get advice, to see if we could find something. And when we walked in, every psychic in the room purposefully looked down at their feet and just tried to ignore us even being there. And there was one woman, bless her heart, this little red-headed woman who was giving a client a reading, and she just looked at us with this beaming smile on her face while her client was crying her eyes out at her table. And eventually she ran into us, and we had one of our people do a reading with her and get information. And she ended up gifting us with a crystal. Her name was Ruth Davenport, and she came out to her trunk. She was first going to give us the crystals that she had in her pocket. And then she said, no, I need to give you guys the big gun. And so we went out to her trunk, and when she reached in to get this crystal, she pulled it out, it cut her. And it cut her pretty bad. She was bleeding. And she was like, oh my God, I can't believe these things don't want me to give you this crystal.
All right, stand by, David. You and I have to take our news break at the bottom of the hour. Exo Nation, David Rountree and I will be back. Don't go away. Hi, this is Rob McConnell, just letting you know that the X-Chronicles newspaper is now available online at www.xzonebookclub.com. All past editions and current editions of the X-Chronicles newspaper are available for 99 cents. That's www.xzonebookclub.com, and that's 99 cents U.S. per edition. And don't forget, the X-Zone store is now open as well for all of your Exo Nation merchandise. www.thexzonestore.com.
Do you have a dis-ease that you would like to alleviate through a natural means? Have you been contacted by angels, ghosts, or even extraterrestrials and want to validate these experiences? Or would you simply like to speak with someone who can help you find your life's purpose? I'm Dr. Joseph Mara, and I'm offering my services free of charge for first-time clients contacting me during the month of April. These free consultations include angel card readings, guided meditations, life coaching, and energy healing. If you have always wanted to explore these types of experiences but were skeptical or simply could not afford them, then take advantage of this free special offer. Contact me through my website, aguidinglight, spelled lite.com, to schedule your consultation today. Until then, I offer you love, light, and laughter.
Exo Nation, our very special guest this hour is David M. Rountree. He is the co-author of a very interesting book, Demon Street USA, the true story of a very haunted house. His website is www.demonstreetusa.com. All right, David, when you and I last were chatting before the news and our commercial break, you were at a psychic fair. A psychic looked at you, gave you a big smile. and went out to her car to get you a crystal. The crystal cut her, and she said maybe for some reason the crystal doesn't want me to give you guys this crystal. So take it from there. And I'm sorry we had to go to the news break.
No, it's fine. What literally happened after that was she gave us this crystal, and it was a fairly large crystal. She told us we had to cleanse it. And she gave us this little chant for us to say when the time came to confront it and to get rid of it. And this little chant became a part of what the end ritual was going to be to banish this thing back to where it came from. So we ended up leaving there, and then there's this whole journey that Robbie, my co-author, took to gather spring water. And he literally went out into the Santa Fe River, went diving down into a spring. And that whole thing was fraught with all sorts of spiritual experiences. But to make a long story short, he got the spring water, and we were able to cleanse the crystal. And we would eventually use that as a key part of the ritual that would eventually banish this thing and send it back to where it came from.
Where did the demon actually come from, Stephen?
Well,
David,
the thing that occurred is we're pretty sure that Clevis was trying to bring his grandfather back, or to contact his grandfather, and something went horribly wrong, because instead of using these dark powers to talk to the dead, which was, I think, what his intent had been, he ended up conjuring this demon to manifest itself on his property. And I think at some point it controlled him instead of him controlling it. For example, one of the visits we made over there, his girlfriend got completely possessed. She just completely, her grin started, and it went from literally her ear to her ear. It was hideous looking. She almost looked like the Cheshire Cat, the way she grinned. And she was just mindless looking. You know, her eyes were vacant. And she would talk in this really raspy, almost animalistic voice that I would find very difficult, her being able to fake or manifest from a little tiny body that she was. She was a very small, diminutive girl. But that sort of thing was occurring. So we're pretty sure that he either made some kind of deal, or he had some kind of connection to where this thing pretty much had a good part of control over him instead of the other way around. Because it certainly acted very independent in dealing with us. In other words, it came after us. It saw us as a threat.
Let me ask you this. During your investigation that you folks did in the house, were there any Ouija boards?
No, that's the thing. There was nothing untoward other than the library. You know, his den was all bookshelves all the way around it. All walls had bookshelves, and they were all covered in these all similar themed books. They were all ancient grimoires, or they were studies on the supernatural. He had a lot of Crowley's works on the shelf. It just all the same subject matter, and it was all dark.
Now, you know, I've been doing this show for 23 years, David, and I have over 6,000 books that have been sent to me from authors all over the world. I have paranormal paraphernalia coming out of my yin-yang. And yet, I have not had 1 ounce of unusual activity.
Well, the books were published, right?
Some were, many weren't.
They're the thing that I don't think it's so much that there may be something associated with the books themselves, although that's possible, just because of the age of the books and things of that nature. These books were all grimoires or spell books. They were books that were conjuring books. They were written to conjure spirits into being.
I have black magic books. I have white magic books. I have voodoo books. I have Santeria books. And,
but you probably aren't reading them out loud, dancing on one foot and swinging a knife in the air while you're doing it either.
Well, that explains what happens to my wife at times.
I'm sure. The whole thing behind it is intent.
I see.
And how this stuff works is that the more intent you put into something, that's literally the power that's being manifested as the human intent. And that's how these things work. And if you intend something strong enough, you create your own reality, so to speak. And if you have enough intent, you create everybody's reality.
But let me ask you this. Based on what you just said, how much of the paranormal is actually created by the person who is the agent instead of being the target of the